And welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful March 11th, 2019. Today was just an absolutely wonderful day. 6 degrees outside. I enjoyed my walk in the afternoon just to clear the cobwebs. It's good to see that spring's around the corner. Members of Council, you have an agenda before you. If I have a motion, please. Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the Town Council adopt the March 11, 2019 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you. Administration, Council, any additions? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk to council about anything that's not on the current agenda. Is anybody like to address council? Okay, see none, we'll move on. There's no presentations or delegations today. There's also no statutory public hearings. So moving on to the adoption of council minutes. We'll do 6.1 and 6.2. Councilor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Town Council approve the council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, and that's both for the RCM on 25th and the GNP of March 4th. Okay, members of council, you had a chance to look through it. Any errors or omissions? Okay, seeing none, I think there was one on the March 4th GNP. It lists Councillor Matties as the deputy mayor, but on February 25th, we swore in Councillor Loy as the deputy mayor. Okay, that was the only error or omission that I saw. So. Okay, so Councillor Bennett, so the motion now is amended to say as amended and not as presented. Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to council boards and commissions and committee minutes. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that Town Council receive the committee minutes for information and placed on file.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, you had the MPC minutes, the Stony Plain Public Library, and the GCC. Any questions or comments regarding those? Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. When I was reading the GCC meeting minutes, I didn't notice that our Economic Development Officer, Sean McCauley, was not listed as an attendee. Does he usually attend those meetings? Or
Yes.
was this during one of the times when he was ill?
I believe this is when he was under surgery for his knee.
Okay, yeah.
Is that correct? I think that was July 22nd.
And does our strategic planning officer, general manager, attend all of those meetings?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett, Sean McCauley was in attendance at that meeting and should be listed as present. And I only attend as an alternate.
So is the minutes incorrect? Are the minutes incorrect for the January 22nd?
I thought Mr. McCauley was still on ER.
Yeah, Your Worship, we're just double checking, but I believe our Economic Development Officer wasn't at that particular meeting, but we'll confirm, and the minutes will reflect what we confirm.
So he was or wasn't?
Was not.
Was not. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the other ones? Okay, Councillor, go ahead.
Administration. I have a question with regards to the library minutes, and it would be on page 25. And I've asked this question, I guess, in another way before, but I just would like to have a little bit of clarification with regards to the individual that will be asked to be a project manager on page 25 out of 87. And so working for the town versus the, in the capacity of a process reviewer working for the library. Can somebody provide a little bit of an overview of the role of this individual in those, both of the, like I understand the project manager, but how does that differ from the process reviewer? Is that with regards to the actual process of running a library, or, you know, can you explain?
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mattis. Does the council representative want to respond to that, or does she let administration?
Councillor Mattis, you've indicated administration, but I would be willing to add my 2 cents worth. But if our administration wants to clarify a bit, that would be good too.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Mattis, my understanding is there's the process of the library construction, moving the library into the new space once that starts to occur. So Mr. Fillmore will be acting on behalf of that particular project. And then the other component is the library has hired him to work on their process in terms of their bylaws and paperwork and those types of things. So it's more of the procedural type of things that happen at the library. There was some question at the last corporate plan meeting regarding financial policies. So he's looking at those types of things and helping them through and work through that. So that's the process component part of what he will be doing for the library, and it's just helping them out in their governance component of the library as one component of that particular project the library's asked him to take care of.
Thank you.
Any more questions and comments regarding the minutes? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. There are no bylaws, so we're moving straight to business items. 9.1, the award for financial reporting. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're proud to present tonight that we have been awarded the 7th in a row annual report from the Government Finance Officers Association for their Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. So this is an award for high quality, easily readable annual report. And it's reviewed by a number of professional staff. And so we're just proud to announce that we've received it again, and we're working on next year already. So bringing that for you to see tonight.
That's good, thank you. And how many years in a row has this been for us?
This is the 7th, Your Worship.
Sure. Congratulations. And maybe if administrators can provide some information on why we put so much emphasis on making sure that we provide good, concise reporting for our residents.
Your Worship, we feel it's very important to be transparent in what the town is using the dollars for. Our annual report is quite comprehensive and talks about all the projects that we've been involved in across the town. So all departments make submissions and make sure that it's well understood within the document, as well as the audited financial statements are included, so anyone has ability to read those. And it also includes some key statistics in the back, so number of permits issued and a number of sort of key figures that would be of interest to residents.
Okay, thank you. Okay. With that, members of council, I need a motion. So, Councillor Deputy Mayor Loy.
Yes, Your Worship, the Town Council accept the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for the Town of Stony Plain 2017 Annual Report.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, any questions or comments regarding the presentation and what we have already read? Deputy Mayor?
Very briefly, Your Worship, I think it's another classic example of the administration that we have for this town. Not only this department, but other departments continuously, in my opinion, go well above and beyond. And I'm glad to see that we haven't slipped, so the pressure's on for next year. Thank you, Your Worship.
That's good. Thank you very much. That's very good. I didn't have a chance to check this year, but when I checked in previous years, we were one of about 3 or 4 towns that actually get this award.
Yeah.
It shows you the commitment from our staff to make sure the information that we do in our community is actually pushed out there so that our residents have a good understanding of what's happened over the past year. Okay. With that, call for the motion. All in favor? Okay. That's carried. And we're just going to take just a quick break here if we can get a picture with the staff, and then we can use that for a news release.
Stand on the other side this time.
Well done. Moving on to 9.2, the 2008 year-end operating surplus. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight you'll see a report in front of you just reporting the preliminary surplus from budget for 2018. Have to switch years. And so some of it's dictated by policy as to how to direct to which reserve. And that would be 1/3 to the tax levy stabilization reserve. So the the surplus was $142.96. And so 1/3 of that is $47,365. And so per policy, that will go to the tax levy stabilization reserve. And then in addition to that, we're recommending that another 1/3 go to general purpose reserve for future capital, and the last 1/3 to also go to tax levy stabilization. So that's why you'll see it split out in the motion the way it is that that first 1/3 is directed by policy, and the rest council could change if required, but this is what we're recommending for you to approve tonight. Within the report, you'll see some explanations as to the variances from budget, and that's on page 43 of your report. We'll just open it up to questions after. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail tonight, as I know you've all read it. You will notice at the bottom of that page 43, it does talk about the utilities surplus as well. So as a reminder, we do keep everything separate. So the utilities are self-funding. So those rates that we receive for water and wastewater, those surpluses go back into the utility reserves. So in the current year, there was a surplus of $229,337, and those are directed to the rate stabilization and capital reserves per reserve policy as well. Other than that, we'll just open it up to any question, and we can provide further comments as to the variances if council so wishes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mattis, if we have the motion, please.
That Town Council approve the distribution of the 2018 operating surplus of $142,096.36 follows $47,365.46 to the tax levy stabilization reserve, $47,365.45 to the general purpose reserve, and $47,365.45 to the tax levy stabilization reserve.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, administration. So I'll open the floor for members of council for questions and comments. Councillor Bennett.
Mr. Mayor, I may be missing something here. Can you explain to me the difference between number 1 and number 3?
There is no difference. It's separated like that because it's through our policy. Because that one, the last 1/3, council can earmark to anything right now. But staff is recommending to go into this, to the tax levy stabilization reserve so that we can draw back later for one-time events later on. So that is by policy, that's what it is. It's 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So we just have to show that. Councillor Matties?
Your Worship, through to administration, I have two questions. One with regards to the over budget for the RCMP contract. It appears that it's 1.4 positions at $245,000 surplus, and I'm just wondering if you could help me understand the cost associated with 1.4 additional members. And secondly, with regards to the surplus for the utility, are we well, I guess, did we have that in 2017, and are we expecting that in 2019?
Okay, thank you.
I'll take RCMP first. Do you want to do utilities first?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Matties. With the utilities, we're monitoring 19. There were some adjustments that we did in 18. For example, with the sewer, the storm used to be covered under the sewer, and we moved the storm out and funded it from the utility rate stabilization. There were overall variances throughout the whole budget. It was hard to pinpoint exactly where it came from. Transmission of the sewer lines, the water utility came in pretty well right on budget. And the waste management, we're still struggling to, with that budget, with the recycling portion of it mostly, in finding where, because every year it fluctuates. It might show up in one year, one place, and the next year it's in a different place. So I think that our contract is up this year in 19, and we'll be doing a new contract, and we would recommend that as the rates were set in December, that any change in rates are funded from this reserve.
Okay.
With the RCMP contract, historically, that contract, we had budgeted for 16 members. And we have in the budget 18 members, but because the members can be called out to anywhere in Canada if there is an emergency someplace, it's always a fluctuating number. And so what we noticed was the number of members that we've had, I reviewed last year and 18, and the number of members that we've had has increased compared to what it was historically. And also the costs overall have increased.
Your Worship, just a little bit further on the RCMP budgets. Again, over a number of years, it can be one of our more challenging budget lines in that it can have some fairly significant percentage-wise shifts one way or the other. Some of it, as a manager has alluded to, can relate to different forms of leave. I know from time to time council may hear that RCMP member is being transferred in and it may take some time and so on and so forth. So we can figure out like an average FTE over there, but it can move up and down. The second thing that I think it's important for council just to be aware of, perhaps be reminded of, is that our requested complement is actually higher than what we budget for, and that's to allow some flexibility. And so in a year when there's lots of absence for one reason or another at the RCMP detachment, our budgets will be fairly close. Sometimes I've seen them significantly under because of those reasons. In a year where we're fully staffed, you can see an over expenditure in that particular budget line. So that's one of the challenges we, I guess, work with for budgeting on that particular RCMP contract line. And I believe the manager also alluded to some costs are increasing just based on the contracts that have been signed, and we're continuing to monitor it, I guess would be fair to say, and examining even going the 2019 budget year as part of spring adjustment. We're looking at that, not to say that one thing will change one way or the other, but it is one that we've spent some time on the last few months trying to analyze further and get to an accurate estimate as possible.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. In this question, I am on page 43 of 87, and it will be to the General Manager of Protective Services. They list here the course lost 10, and then you use the word revenue days in April, and then 30 revenue days in September, and it just says 15 days in October. I'm gathering that as revenue as well, in addition to 10 in-season rain days. So I'm a little confused. If you lose it over all these rain days, same as revenue. Pardon me, Your Worship. That's my question, if you understand it.
Thank you.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy. So yes, those are revenue days. So sorry, we didn't put revenue after all of those, but typically a rain day is a day of which we don't have folks on the golf course. Typically in an annual budget, we budget 2 days per year. So over a 5-month operation, that's roughly 10 days. And then, of course, it snowed in September, October, so we didn't get the benefit of even being open in those months last year, last season. And we had a late start in April. Usually we're having golfers on the golf course around, what's
Masters.
the Masters? Yes, thank you very much. So the Masters golf tournament in April, that's the weekend that we strive to be open for, and sometimes we hit that and sometimes we don't. So basically what we're suggesting, and not suggesting, but informing you, is the number of days that we lost related to weather was quite substantial last year. In addition to the greens, we were on spring rates basically for the entire year. So that's not 50% of our rate, but that's about 2/3 of our rate that we would typically charge. So we're down 1/3 of our revenue already just on the spring rate because of the conditions of the golf course.
Further to that, Your Worship, so in total then we lost 55 days out of the golf season in 2018.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Lloyd, that's our estimation for sure, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie?
Through you to administration, just 2 questions here. First, in referring to page 42, the following chart, a summary of the town's past surpluses and deficits. Looking at this being our lowest year that is not in deficit, does that then project more accurate budgeting? Would that be a fair estimation in looking at that chart?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, it would be a bit of that, definitely tightening up the budgets overall and saying, you know, we haven't spent this, we're going to take it down to what we've actually been spending. And then I'd also say just sort of those big anomalies with the golf course and photo radar, those contributed as well. They were fairly large numbers in the current year, so a bit of both.
Okay. Excellent. We appreciate the more accurate we can be in budgeting, I think the better. The second is a question in regards to, on page 43, the snow removal. It talks about the snow removal reserve having a balance of $300,460.54. And then in 2018, the amount used for snow removal from these 2 line items was $120,658. So does that $120,658, does that come out of the reserve, or is that our budgeted amount and the reserve remains at $300,460 and change?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, the remaining amount in the reserve, we haven't touched it in 18, is the 300,000, and we had budgeted, I believe, over 200,000 for snow removal, and we only used 120, so that was part of the surplus that we saw there. And in policy, it says that we will transfer that amount. However, what we've observed is the amount in the reserve would cover 1.5 to 2 snow removals, and we think that that reserve should be capped.
If I can follow up on that then through Your Worship to administration. So is there potential that we should be looking at a change in the policy to identify a cap on that reserve then?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, that is what we were discussing internally, that may make sense, and maybe not a dollar amount, but maybe rounds of snow removal, so that we don't have to update the policy each year, but it caps it at whatever that number is, operations is comfortable with, whether it's the 3 rounds or what we've typically seen in the past. So we definitely had those discussions and have marked it on the policy that this is probably a change that we should bring forward to council.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd support that change. I'd like to see that in there and then give the direction as to where any monies that would exceed that should go as per policy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Councilor Matthews.
Your worship, I have a question for administration from page 5051, but it's basically on page 50. With regards to the legal costs to date, with regards to dealing with lawsuits and estimated for what's for 2019, can we just have a little bit of information as to what it's costing us for legal costs?
Okay, so page 5051 is on the next item. We're still dealing with
sorry.
nine.
I'm sorry.
We're dealing with
Sorry.
9.2.
I was just looking at yeah, then I'm good. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Your worship, we can tell you we spend about $50,000 on legal, or that's what we spent in the prior year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Councilor Meyer?
Just a quick one. Just because photo radar is a bit of a hot button for many of our residents, we did see great compliance, and that's wonderful. So, are we looking at moving the radar where we're monitoring? And if so, would these new locations potentially be bringing in new revenue? I assume. I mean, I can't expect you to see the future, but are we looking at trouble problems or trouble places?
Okay. Go
Your
ahead,
worship.
General Manager. If you can just, I think we had this report a couple weeks ago, so if you can just.
Your worship, through to Councillor Meyer and all of council, the province of Alberta just released its findings related to the automated traffic review, which was conducted in 2017, early 2018. So there's a bit more stringent qualifications with respect to what site would be a photo radar applicable site. We do fall within all of the guidelines that the province has set out. We're doing much of the stuff that has been recommended and that we're required to do. So we do have to go through some parameters in terms of providing traffic safety impacts. So if there's a lot of collisions at a particular site or on a particular roadway, that would qualify. If there's a life safety, i.e. school zone, playground zones, which is where we're already doing. If there's an area of which we cannot enforce using conventional traffic methods, we can do so there too. So we're certainly falling within those zones. There are some zones of which we can address and continue to address, and they may bring the revenues up, they may not. It's one of those ones where we'll put the devices out and put the automated traffic enforcement staff out there. And if people are going the speed limit, then we don't have to issue the violations. But the revenue that we do bring in is 95% of that is school zone and playground zones. So we do bring a substantial amount in, even in zones of which require people to travel at slower speeds.
So just a follow-up. So just for my own clarification, it's an ongoing process. It's not like a yearly, annually process where we move them and they stay in one spot. You continue to move them about.
Yes.
Your worship, through to Councillor Meyer. So we do have several zones of which our operators work in. Not all of them are school zone and playground zones. When we do have folks in zones, we do post them on our webpage to ensure that people understand where people are operating, where the operators are operating. Under the new the new recommendations, we'll be listing all our sites. We'll just go a step further and list the daily, when they're daily in an area. We'll make sure that's on the webpage, but we'll have a page dedicated to photo radar that'll list all the sites of which they may operate in. We will enhance that by saying we are in this area on this particular day at these particular times.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much for the report. I look forward to the audited ones and to see where we actually sit. Definitely happy that we've been able to have a surplus of 0.31% of the actual budget. I think if you can be under 4 to 5% of the budget of our size, actually we're doing really good. And members of council, if you can just look at the the surpluses from year to date on page 42. And you see that there's goes up and down, and I think that has a lot to do with the budget that we do and the actuals that happen. So as we get more refined to the actuals that actually happen, we refine our budget so we can get those numbers to be a little bit smaller each and every year. And in 2014, there was a huge surplus, and that was the exact opposite of what happened with the RCMP budget that happened this year. We were very, very underfunded in terms of the number of officers, and therefore we only funded, I think, 10 or 11 versus, because there's a lot of people transferring in and out. So therefore, that was a huge surplus for us that year. Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to 9.3. This is the Somerville Springs demolition order. And go ahead, administration, when you're ready.
Thank you to the mayor and council. I'd like to provide a brief verbal overview to the report that's on the agenda this evening. I believe that there's two significant issues that we need to consider, and that's the town's mission and our core values. And I'll go into that in a little bit of detail in this presentation. So the town administers permits under the Safety Codes Act and the Alberta Building Code. And we're guided by the town's quality management plan in the provision of that service. So in other words, it's our roadmap to provide inspection services to accommodate growth in the community. So when we look at the town's mission, vision, and values, the town's mission is that we are aligned with the strong belief in community involvement, hence meetings like this in council chambers, and we embrace opportunities for growth. So looking at the project and the report that I have provided to council for consideration, it's particularly important to note that all safety code permits had expired on March 1st, 2017 for this project. And in view of that basis, this project does not conform to or comply with the town's core values of life safety. It's in contravention of the Safety Codes Act, the Alberta Building Code, and additionally, by the spring of 2018, there continued to be no heat in the buildings, and therefore they're not suitable for any form of human habitation. By April 9th of 2018, as set out in the report, administration had identified significant potential catastrophic structural damages that, in the opinion of our safety codes officer and with the engineering report that we have received, that the proposed units are unsuitable for habitation due to safety concerns. Later on that year in June, actually June 20th, 2018, fire burned several of the units of the Somerville Springs. And when that incident occurred, ultimately the taxpayer had to pay the cost for the firefighting on that project, going back to the heart of the development not being in compliance with the appropriate safety codes. And the current state of the project is that all remaining units remain unheated and have been in that situation for 4 winters. There's no electrical power to the site whatsoever, and there's no gas for any form of heating. So following the fire, administration had proceeded with the completion of a detailed engineering report completed by a firm that specializes in forensic engineering and structural engineering. They have provided the report to the safety codes officer, and that helps to form the basis for the demolition order that has been issued by the town. And a brief synopsis from the engineer indicates that the site renders it unsafe and that demolition is warranted. In looking at the actual order that was issued by the safety codes officers, there's 7 different conditions that are listed as being in contravention of the Alberta Building Code. not wanting to go into any detail because we have yet to go to a hearing, and any evidence that we would discuss could be used against the town. But I will give you the listing of the key issues that are in contravention of the Alberta Building Code. One is the protection from freezing, i.e. no heat in the buildings. There's standing water has been noted inside of the structures, and you can see a flood line on the concrete walls. Grading of backfill, unsupervised with respect to geotechnical engineering. Strength and rigidity of the framing on the buildings. Again, protection from dampness due to water penetration coming into the structures. There's foundation failure based on the engineering analysis that has been provided to the town, and a lack of exterior cladding. There's also numerous broken windows and reportedly a fairly good crop of pigeons living there presently, so it's not good overall. In the report before you this evening, we've laid out the chronology of the history of the project and the reports to council, and administration will be happy to answer any questions that the council members may have.
Great. Thank you for your presentation and the report that's provided. Councillor Laurie, motion please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the Town Council accepts the Somerville Springs demolition order report for information.
Okay. Members of council, open for comments and questions. Again, I have to reiterate that this is a legal proceeding that's going on here, so if we can try to steer questions away from legal matters so that that our staff have the ability to do the job that they need to do. Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to commend our administration for providing this report to our public tonight. This is probably the one question that our residents ask most frequently, and I like to be very transparent, and I like them to know that this is an issue that we're still looking at, and it hasn't fallen off anybody's radar. We are working on it, and we are going through the process that needs to happen in order to be responsible. So thank you, administration, for providing this report and making it public to our audience tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Meyer.
Well, I'd just like to echo Councillor Bennett's appreciation for compiling a nice, thorough report that's easy to understand. I do have just one question in regards to just firefighting, and ask if what we've done to, if anything, to address any further fire risk.
That's good. Okay, go ahead.
Your Worship, to Councillor Meyer, the fire department has very detailed pre-plans in place with respect to the property. Pre-plan is basically they look at the site and they look at where they can set their trucks, where they can stage, where the nearest water source is, and things like that. And also, what are some of the mitigating factors in terms of if a fire was to start there, so other properties that might become involved. So because it's a private property, the best that the fire department can do is have a very detailed pre-plan. Should something happen, unfortunate happen at that site. The first fire event that happened there provided them better opportunity to enhance the pre-plan that they already had constructed, and probably because they had a pre-plan in place, it minimized the impacts of that initial fire. So I think they're set up with respect to pre-plans, getting equipment in, who they would call in terms of Spruce Grove and Parkland County, because there are no water sources out there at the moment. So they would have to make sure they have backup equipment to support them in that effort.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay. See none, thank you very much, administration, for bringing this forward and providing all the public information that could be provided. So that's very good for us to have out. So in terms of next steps, the hearing is scheduled for April.
We just received a communication late this afternoon that the Safety Codes Council is scheduling the hearing for the 29th of April. So we have our solicitor tasked, and we've laid out a roadmap of the evidence that we need to collect. And we'll be coordinating that with the appropriate staff to ensure that we have a good, solid basis with which to make our representations at the hearing at that time. Thank you.
Okay, good. So then my question then is, after the hearing, I'm guessing we'll probably wait X number of days for Safety Codes to provide a ruling, then will that ruling be then communicated back to council at a public meeting?
I'm not sure what timeline they operate under to release their information, but as soon as we have that available, we can certainly communicate that.
Okay. Good.
Your worship, I looked this up today, 60 days, they have 60 days to make a ruling, and then we will know.
Okay. So they have 60 days?
Okay.
And in that 60 days, we can't do anything? Okay, sounds good. Any more questions? No. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're going on to 9.4, and I notice the motion. Councillor Matties?
Council direct administration to provide an update regarding 3 of the town's 4 basic strategies for the management and preservation of the Willow Park natural area as originally presented at the April 26, 2010 regular council meeting.
Okay, so that is your recommendation to come forward as you notice motion, right?
There's a notice of motion for this evening,
Okay.
yes.
So then the town manager and I will look for days that are free on the schedule, and probably the 25th will be the day that it'll be brought back for a council debate.
Okay.
Unless something else pops up, and then if we can't do it on the 25th, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay. And 9.5, notice of motion. Go ahead, Councilor Matties.
Council direct administration to include the following reports monthly at the governance and priorities or regular council meeting for information. This would be under staff reports, administrative reports. The first one is, number 1, report to council, department report, key items on table, in progress or soon to be, and summary of town manager involvement, which would be town projects and initiatives and key meeting dates. So that would be the first report, a report to council. And then the second report would be a bylaw violations report, which could include Excel spreadsheet and chart summary. And finally, permit report, which provides monthly issued permits for the community.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the notice of motion. So again, the town manager will look at it, and so far it looks like it's going to be March 25th. We'll bring it back. If something does come up, we'll let you know of another suitable date to come forward. Okay.
Thank you.
With that ends our business items. Moving on to information items and council discussion. We'll start with Councilor Matties.
Love to. I just got to find my phone. Just bear with me a sec. Okay, so the first item, which we just ended up getting the homeless study report from FCSS, but there was a delay in compiling the regional results, and that they are expected to be presented to us at FCSS on Wednesday, but we did receive that report today. Something that was interesting that I had recently noted was on a home renovation show that I was watching, and it was called The Tiny House Big Living, and it happened to be a couple that were 6'7" and 6'5", and they were building a tiny house that was built out of a school bus. And with this, they were planning to travel throughout the United States and get to know the new communities that they were living in. And one of the ways they were wanting to do that was by hiring an artist that was going to put a mural on the bus. And basically, their intent was to create positive, happy thoughts and energy, which would provide an opportunity for people to connect with them via their bus. And the artist had said, a bus is a perfect place for a mural, which then got me thinking about our new bus service and even on the regional basis, that in terms of advertising for the town of Stony Plain, that would possibly be an opportunity. So I'm just wondering if it's been considered or if it could be considered in the future.
So advertising on a bus.
Advertising on the bus, yes.
Your worship, I don't, well, I can say clearly anyways that I don't believe we've had any kind of contemplation as to what the deckling or advertising or marketing, so to speak, on our planned bus purchases would be. So that, that hasn't occurred at all. I would expect, Your Worship, and the rest of council, that as we would move towards that, there be some expectation of branding from whatever entity we're being a part of, whether that's some yet to be named regional transit system or part of our sub-regional system. At that point in time, there may be some conversation as to what goes on the side of them or what's put on them, but I believe we're still, 6 to 8 months from at least beginning that, Your Worship.
Okay. Anything else?
That's everything.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship. Just two very brief items. I'm very glad to see the warm weather has arrived here, and I hope it stays around for many, many months. And we did the time change, and everything went smoothly. Hope everybody remembered to set their clocks and didn't miss any Sunday appointments. That's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just share an experience I had, or a couple of experiences I had this weekend driving along, it would be 6 to 8 Friday evening. I came across a young man who was walking down the middle of the road, and I pulled over, and I initially was going to give him heck about walking in the middle of the road, and then he pointed out, well, the path hadn't been cleared. So I was kind of had to stop and go, oh, well, I didn't mention that I was a counselor. So anyhow, there was that, and then also along 779 between the Genesis on the Lakes subdivision there and Jean Paul II, again, youths walking on the road in terrible conditions. And so I just thought I'd share this concern with my fellow councillors that we are looking forward to 779 getting that sidewalk, and clearly there is a bit of a concern because I also see high school students regularly walking down to the 7-Eleven along 628 and them for whatever reason not taking the path provided. But it does speak to an issue that maybe could be on our radar to address, maybe a future date, a sidewalk or something that, well, yes, it's just a matter of them crossing the road, but they don't. So anyhow, just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And yes, there are plans for pathways that lead to the corner of 779 and 628. Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate you and our regional partners, mayors, on the excellent job, the excellent message that you provided at the State of the Region address, and to all of the staff, the chamber. I know that our administrative assistant was very involved in all of that, so kudos to all of them. It was a very nice, lovely evening, and I think the message got out that Stony Plain is, number one, open for business, and number two, has a very fun mayor that leads us. In addition to that, Mr. Mayor, I'd also just like to announce that I've been invited to go to the RMA conference next week. That is the Rural Municipalities of Alberta. I'm representing the ASHA board, the Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association there. When I look through the agenda, it looks to be quite a bit different than our AUMA. And I'm sure that through conversations with other rural municipalities, I'll learn a great deal. And I'll bring you back some little tidbits if you're interested.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And look forward to what you have to share from the RMA. Councillor Laurie, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to echo Councillor Bennett's comments in respect to the State of the Union, or the State of the Region. It was a fantastic event, very well done by all three municipalities, and I think the conversation afterwards, the open couch conversation afterwards, was a great benefit as well. So I like that format. I hope to see that continue in years. I do have a question through you to administration in respect to notice of motion. As I'm reviewing our procedural bylaws, when I look at item 3.4, it speaks any member of council, town official, person wishing to have an item of business placed on the agenda shall make the submission to the town manager not later than 6 days prior to the scheduled council meeting date. The submission shall contain adequate information to the satisfaction of the town manager to enable council to deal with the matter. Just curious in respect to the notice of motion that was placed on the agenda for Councillor Matties, those were put in on the 3rd of March. And so I need clarification on our policy as to whether that is 6 business days or 6 working days, or if that is 6 true calendar days, because the policy does not define that.
Your Worship, I believe if it's not defined, I think we would default to business days. That would be our standard default if it's not defined.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's why it was just read in as a notice of motion today. And we'll deal with it on the 25th or later if we have to. Okay, with that, no more? Okay. Looking and see what we have. So again, on March 13th, the PSD 70 is having a SPC replacement school presentation, and that's open to the public. I believe most of us are attending. It'll be very interesting to see where they're at with the provincial government and how far along they are. Again, we're working with them to be partners in this development and this reconstruction and replacement. So hopefully we'll see you there. And then on February 15th, those of you that are available, we lost a member of the Mayor's Task Force recently. Jim Clark passed away suddenly, and his funeral services is this Friday at 2 p.m. I believe I am attending. I think Councillor Meyer and Councillor Bennett is attending as well, and I'll be at 2 o'clock at the Parkland funeral services. With that, I just want to echo the great work that our staff did with the State of the Region address. If you saw the video and had a chance to relook at it, staff has done a great job over the last year to collect footage, photos, and pictures so that we can actually have a glimpse of what happened in our community in 2018. And as mentioned again, I like to have a little bit of fun, so when we did that, we made sure that we touched on a lot of our highlights, but it also made sure it was kind of lighthearted a little bit here and there so that realize that we're not all stuffy, button-up elected officials here. We actually enjoy life. And I think that's why we're so good at our jobs here, because we're passionate about the community, want to be involved in the community, and we don't just see this as just like a little desk job for us. So with that, that closes our regular meeting. So we're going to go into closed session. So for the members of the public and the media that are here, once we go into closed session, you're asked to leave council chambers. You're welcome to stay out in the lobby, in the foyer, etc. We will let you know when we're completed. That there will be a motion to come back into public meeting before anything is before the meeting is adjourned, right? So we'll make sure that if you want to be, just notify the recording secretary. No motions are made in closed session. If any motions are made, they're made after we come out of closed session. And with that, I'll ask for a motion. Councillor Bennett.
We move into closed session.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. We'll take a 10-minute recess and staff get everything all ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Council council accepts the report on high-intensity residential fire or HERF regulations as information and direct that administration engage with our developer builder community and industry experts regarding the high-intensity residential fire regulations and bring a report back to council.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions or comments on the motion? Okay. See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That's carried. And that ends our agenda, so thank you very much, members, administration, for writing the reports and bringing this back. And to council, thank you for reading your packages and adding to the discussion and debate that allows us to provide governance in our communities. With that, it is adjourned.